Welcome to our new series called Geopolitics with Alex. It's actually a follow-up to our lecture series on understanding the war. My name is Alex Stubb, and I'm professor and director here at the School of Transnational Governance at the European University Institute. Now, first off, I should admit that as an academic, I'm a little bit reluctant to give you day-to-day analysis of world political events, but perhaps in my capacity as former Prime Minister, Finance Minister and Foreign Minister of Finland, it's a little bit easier to do. But what we have to understand, and what I want to express to you, is that sometimes these things actually go horribly wrong because you are making commentary or some event which is happening in real time. And today is certainly, in our first episode, an example thereof. I will give you my 2 cents on President Vladimir Putin's speech on the 21st of September, and I'm giving you an assessment only a few hours after he has given the speech. And I will do it by giving you a general analysis and then pose 5 questions of what I think the significance of this speech was and has been roughly 7 months into Russian aggression and war in Ukraine. So let's begin by the general assessment. I think this speech was significant for 3 reasons. Reason number 1 is that it in many ways illustrates, not even symbolizes, but practically shows us that we are entering into a new stage in this war. Secondly, I think it was a speech in which Putin was actually quite desperate, and even so, I think we should take him very seriously. And thirdly, I believe that it is safe to say that we are now in this war for the long haul. And because it has been so unpredictable since its beginning, I think we should really think the unpredictable. So entering a new phase in the war, embrace yourself. My 5 questions today are as follows. First question, what did he say? So what was the message of Vladimir Putin in his speech today? First of all, he said that he will mobilize roughly 300,000 men and women for the Russian army. This was then qualified a little bit later by Defense Minister Shoigu, who said that actually we have the capability to mobilize 25 million, so this is just a fraction. Secondly, he did once again outline the further annexation of areas such as Luhansk and Donetsk. But not only that, he will organize referenda in these regions, which are obviously only makeshift referenda in many ways, to declare the independence of these areas. And thirdly, and probably more significantly, once again, he threatened the use of nuclear weapons. So there was a little bit of old, in other words, threat of nuclear weapons and further annexation of the regions, but a little bit of new, in other words, the partial mobilization of 300,000 men and women, and then also the staged referenda. What do I conclude from this? I actually conclude that I'm not sure any of these 3 points, mobilization, annexation, referenda, and nuclear, will actually work, but it does show you the level of his desperation. My second question today is, why did he say it now? So what's the significance of the 21st of September, albeit it was delayed by, say, 12 hours. The speech was supposed to be given on Wednesday night. Instead, it was recorded and then published on Tuesday night, and then published actually on Wednesday morning. So why did he say it now? I think he is actually in trouble, both politically and militarily. And politically, I mean both outside of Russia and inside of Russia. I'll get to that in a second. And militarily, he has now suddenly been pushed back by the Ukrainian forces who are regaining territory that the Russian military had previously acquired. So I think the thinking here is that without the actual mobilization, Russia might potentially lose this war in Ukraine, and that raises the risk, obviously, for Putin. However you define loss, of course, the definition of the war itself, which he actually calls still a special operation, and the definition of a victory keeps on getting narrower and narrower. But I think he feels genuinely threatened that things are not looking well. And I'm not trying to analyze his mannerism with his closest military advisors, but it's just a reality on the ground. So therefore, I think the timing is there now that he wants to send a message to the West and the rest of the world and to Ukraine that he's actually ready to escalate this, that this is not going to stop here. This is something we've talked about in the series on understanding the war. This war is too big for Putin to fail, and if he is close to failure, he has to do something, and that's why the speech was done now. What is my conclusion on this? Why did he say it now? My conclusion is that even if he might be bluffing, say on nuclear weapons, and he said he's not bluffing, but even if he might be bluffing, take him seriously. This is not the moment for complacency and thinking that he's not going to do what he says. Quite often he does. Things don't turn out as he expects, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take him seriously. My third question today then is, how should we react to this speech? Well, I come back to, I guess, my slightly Finnish approach. First of all, is to say, let's stay cool, calm, and collected. Let's draw some conclusions, let's prepare, but let's not get hysterical about it. Secondly, I think actually that it would be very useful if the United Nations, during its General Assembly week, in New York, would condemn his speech and what he claims to perhaps do in the future, and condemn him with very strong language. And I would prefer to see a vote which then could be compared to the original vote condemning Russian aggression in Ukraine, which was something in the ballpark of 141 in condemning Russia, 35 abstaining, and 4 in favor. Because I think even though the West and the rest have had different reactions to this, I think he might be losing some international support because of the action that he's doing at the moment. And it would be good to test this in the cradle of international cooperation, the United Nations. I also think that we should react by not giving in 1 inch. Do not negotiate with Putin. The only thing that he understands is power. Anytime you show any weakness for his demands, he will just push forward. And this is what we've seen in his pattern, even during this war. We saw it in Georgia, we saw it with the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula, and we've seen it with his aggression with Ukraine. So what is my conclusion on how should we react? Please continue to support Ukraine militarily and financially. That is the only thing that we can help with at the moment. My fourth question today is, why is he in trouble? Well, I think there are a number of reasons. One of them is that he's losing respect and support at home. Of course, early on in the war, you rally around the flag. The Russian propaganda machinery has been very strong, and there has been, whether believe in the opinion polls or not, fairly strong support at home. But the minute the war starts coming a little bit too close for comfort, when it hits St. Petersburg or Moscow, when there is mobilization, he might actually start losing support. And people are thinking, why are we doing this? Remember, it's much easier to defend your country than to attack someone, especially if you don't really understand why you are doing it. He's also losing respect, I think, among those who were at least lukewarm in their support or not condemning Russian aggression early on, the likes of China and the likes of India. We saw that at a big meeting in Eurasia in Kazakhstan last week, when there were clearly murmurs coming from President Xi Jinping and from Prime Minister Modi saying that, well, perhaps it's not the time to have war. And then Putin almost having to be apologetic and say, we will try to do our best to end this. The interesting twist and turn in world politics here is that, there was a moment when, Xi Jinping was sort of looking at Putin and sort of hoping that he would win. But now we're in a moment where actually an authoritarian leader, who he has personally felt quite close to, short of declaring his love, but at least eternal friendship, might be messing it up. And this will make him look bad at home right before the conference that he's organizing, the big Congress he's organizing mid-October. I should also add that we are looking at a moment when Russia might be potentially driving itself into full isolation. We've talked about it before: isolation economically, financially, politically, culture, sport, travel, visa bans being an example, and energy. So we're looking at a really crucial moment, and why I think he's in trouble. And he might be losing some of the lukewarm or at least neutral support of the rest. So what is my conclusion of why he is in trouble? I guess it is to say that I don't think Putin understands the phrase, if you're in a hole, stop digging. And he's digging deeper and deeper at the moment, and therefore his action is quite desperate. My final and fifth question today is, what will happen next? Well, my prediction is probably as good or as bad as yours, but I'll take a little stab at it. First of all, I think that the mobilization will not be quick. It will actually take months. They'll have to do a lot of training. And I'm also a little bit baffled by the fact that Russia hasn't been able to support its 150,000 troops in Ukraine in terms of infrastructure and additional material. So how will it be able to do that for 300,000 men and women? But, this is a question that can only be answered months down the line. My second prediction of what will happen next is that I don't think that the nuclear option is a bluff. He might use it, but I think the alternative cost in using it is too high. It won't be a strategic attack, it would be a tactical one. And then you'd have to think that what is the reaction of the rest of the world? The damage that he would do will of course be colossal. We're not talking the images that we have of say Nagasaki, but we are talking about the use of a weapon which should not be used, which has been there as a deterrent, and he would have to think about what are the extra costs. So it's not a bluff, but be careful because he is quite unpredictable. Finally, what will happen next? Be prepared for not a winter war, but a war of winter. So we're looking at a prolonged conflict, which means that the support coming in for Ukraine is, of course, very important. So my conclusion today in this first episode of Geopolitics with Alex is to say that we are in this for the long haul, and we have to keep in mind that Putin is very unpredictable. And right now he's in a corner. So don't expect rational behavior as we would see rational behavior. See defensive behavior of an empire in decline and of a leader that might be looking at his, if not last days, weeks, months, but last years in power. This has been a war which has gone horribly wrong from the perspective of President Vladimir Putin. That is why he's trying to save, and that is why he gave his speech this morning. Thank you very much.
America made its declaration of independence.